So I don't know. Any other thoughts on that before we move along to the next question here?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Cool. All right, let's move along to the next question. Jerry Weiss Corbley says, Clayton, you explain things very well to novice like me. I'm a novice too, so this is the blind leading the blind here. And I wanted to know the definition of a 3-tech, which you talk about a lot, and a 1-tech, which I've also heard. So let's drop this down real quick. And yeah, we got the graphic. Go ahead, Tim, pop that up there, and let's start to explain it here. So when we're talking about tech, look at the numbers at the top of the screen here. So you've got the positions, right? Tackle, guard, center, guard, tackle, Y, the Y being the attached tight end. You'll notice on the bottom on the bottom of the screen, the red arrows are the gaps. When you're talking gaps, A gap, B gap, typically that's an offensive term, right? I mean, it's pretty universal, both offense and defense. But what you're describing is the A gap being in between the centers and the center and the guards. The B gap being in between the guards and the tackles, and then the C gap being on the outside shoulder of the tackles, even the D gap on the outside shoulder of the tight end. Now, with that being said, from the defense's perspective, when you're talking technique, you're talking about what position these players, these defensive linemen or edge rushers are lining up in. So the easiest way to determine this is, if they're lining directly across, I mean center mass on an offensive lineman, they're even numbers, okay? So if you're directly over the center, that's what we call 0-tech or nose, okay? So that's a 0. If you're lined up over one of the two guards directly over them, that's a 2-tech. Over top of the tackles is a 4-tech. Over top of the tight end is a 6-tech. Now, the numbers in between those gaps, or the outside shoulders of each offensive lineman, are odd numbers. So if you're on the outside shoulder of the center on either side, that's a 1-tech. Outside shoulder of the guard, that's a 3-tech. Outside shoulder of the tackle, that's a 5-tech. Outside shoulder of the tight end is what we refer to as a 7-tech. Now, sometimes the 7-tech and the 9-tech will get kind of mixed in. If they're lining up outside of the Y, you'll hear a lot of people get lazy and just say, well, that's a wide 9 look, right? And in most cases, I can understand why they would look at it that way. So that's how that lines up there. Thank you for pulling that graphic up, Tim. Now, if we were to pull up what the Packers did last year, if you'll drop that graphic down there. Thank you, sir. So let's just go to the box cam here. This is a perfect example. If I can get it zoomed in a little bit more, that's about the best I can do, y'all. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's about the best we can do. So we're going to draw lines here again. They're lined up over the center. 0, 2, 4. 2, 4, right? So let's take an example here. Let's go into blue to make it a little easier. Devontae Wyatt, how's he lined up right here? He is on the inside shoulder of the tackle. That's what you refer to as a 4-eye. So if you're on the inside shoulder rather than directly across from him, you go with the 4, but you'll call it an eye, okay? Over here you got Kenny, and this is what we talked about all last year. Many people still think he was playing 3-tech all year, and he wasn't. The majority of the time he was playing what we refer to as 1-tech. So he's in between. I'm sorry. In this case, he is playing 3-tech. Right. This is a nickel set. If you'll notice, actually, it might even be a dime set. Yeah. So what you've got here, it looks like there's no tight end on this formation, so it's probably a 4-wide set unless the Y is flexed out. So in that case, they go a little bit wider with their fronts, like a double 4. In this case, a 4-eye, and they're going a 3-tech, which is pretty close. This is what we're talking about, a wide 9 out here, right? Wide 9 by Gary. Look how wide Gary is out here.
So they call him the edge, right?
Exactly. So if you were to draw this out, here you've got a 4-eye, right, over top of him, and here you got Kenny in the 3-tech. Now notice, even though he's playing 3-tech, he's closer to the center, so you would still consider him the nose tackle in this specific formation out of the dime, if they're in a dime or a nickel. It's hard to tell because the DBs are off screen. So now if we go to the next screen grab here, I believe we've already looked at that one. Let's go to the second one. Now let's look at where everybody's lined up. So in this set, you're in more of a base set, it looks like, right? Because two in the backfield, and they may have been identifying this guy as a running back as well in the backfield. But notice with this split back set, remember what Matt LaFleur says. 2 backs equals 2 gaps. So now you're starting a 2 gap here, and look at what you did. You put TJ Slayton in the 1-tech, right? And now you've got Kenny in the 3-tech on this particular play, okay? So now if we go to the next screen grab, now what you're going to see is Kenny is playing that 1-tech that we keep talking about, right? Because now you're in probably a passing situation, more of that. They're using a little orbit motion here. And look at Devontae Wyatt playing the 3-tech. So to answer your question, Jerry, what you've got here is a 3-tech is basically in between the guard and the tackle, typically on the outside shoulder of the guard. And the reason that's important, because look at Gary over here, right? And they've got a tight end as well. So Gary's in that wide look. He's in a 7 look, right? It'd be real easy for this tight end to chip and a tackle come out and kick, right? Well, if you do that and you've got a true pass rushing 3 tech, guess what happens? This guard is on an island, right? As where with Kenny, this is what they did strategically last year with Kenny on pass rushing downs, is they put him in the 1 tech to force them to double team Kenny. And you would see so many times, if you go back and watch Chalk Talk from last year, what we call touch spy, that's what we're referring to. Kenny would literally engage with the double team and not even try to rush the quarterback. And he'd just kind of hold his ground, look for the run in case they run a draw. And then if the quarterback goes to scramble, bust out and make the tackle. So, again, the goal is to try to force your best pass rushers. In this case, Rashawn Gary is the best pass rusher, and Devontae Wyatt's your best interior pass rusher. You're forcing one-on-ones in that situation there. That's the whole goal. So it's just trying to put your best players in a position to be successful there. And that's why it's important to have an edge opposite of Rashawn Gary while they're trying to chip with a tight end and put a tackle on there as well, and then they're going to release and it turns into a one-on-one. You got a one-on-one here. Imagine if you got a dog out here, which LVN really turned it on at the end of the year. He's always going to be singled up on this cat right here, right? So does that all make sense, guys? Did I explain that correctly there in terms of the 3 tech, all that good stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was going to say that a lot of information there. Just adding to that, when you're talking about kicking out on Rashawn there with the tackle and the tight end, given that 3, yes, thank you, Rashawn. You're about to eat. Given where that 3 tech is, looking at the guard, he's already looking back, trying to get that, just for the pistol shotgun. He's looking back to tap the center. You get another jump on that. I mean, you're in the backfield, so it's why you got to have someone that needs respect on the outside and someone that can disrupt on the inside.
Absolutely. Now, here's a great question by Greg Rice. He says, if the 3 tech becomes a problem, doesn't the center help? He can, but look how much more difficult it is for him. If we're rushing outside shoulder of the guard, look how far he's got to reach over. Typically what you end up doing, if they try to double up the center and the guard with the 3 tech, if the 3 tech is not crashing in, if he's working the outside shoulder, you're just washing the center completely out of the play. But if they do that, guess what happens? You got Kenny Clark in a one-on-one situation, and that boy going to eat.
Yep.
So
that's what we talk about all the time. You can't double team everybody, right?
Exactly right. And that's why it's important to have 4 good rushers. However, last year with everybody getting acclimated to the system and everybody wants blitz heavy and man coverage and this and that, Hafley said, you know what? If they're going to double Kenny, let's do a touch spy with him. We're winning the hat count +1 there, because he's going to occupy a double team. And now if they chip Gary, Devontae, you got to go win your matchup. And by the way, Devontae Wyatt ended up, 5 or 6 sacks at the interior position with limited snaps too, because they did that heavy rotation. And I think people are going to be surprised if we get a chance, if we have time tonight to get to the defensive tackle talk. We're going to look at the defensive tackle room. Everybody acts like the Packers sucked at sacking the quarterback last year. They were 8th in the league at sacks, by the way, which is amazing. Like it's like, what are we even talking about here? So, yeah, and okay, great. I'm glad you're in here, Jerry. Thank you for the question. You guys are going to screw up asking those questions with me because I'm a nerd with this stuff. I love talking X's and O's. I remember when we first started doing the podcast, I told Ryan, I said, boy, a listener screwed up. They sent me an email asking if I could break down a play. And I'm like, I will waste so much time on this podcast. X's and O's, man. This is what I love. And I was trying to keep it off the pod because I didn't feel like people wanted to talk about that stuff. So, but anyway, there you go. There's a little mini chalk talk.
Question for you real quick, Clay.
Question.